content over everything. Go on and fly first. Now, so everybody would try, even the other Caribbeans, would try to affect a Jamaican accent. My family, the other side, used to do it. So I understand that. In America, the demographics are different. Every group, I think the difference in America is, you know, if you wanted to open a business and you wanted a ready-made consumer base, there were African-American, blacks, African-American. In this country, it was a little more difficult to break into business because your customer base was that much smaller. And I think for the African-American consumer, how you doing, my brother, you all right? For the African-American consumer, he felt, in a way, like we always buying from other foreigner shops. We always eating from foreigners, we always buying from foreigners. When are we going to do our own thing? Of course, you have your Roscoe chicken and waffles. You have American business, black African-American businesses. But by and large, a lot of the businesses were Caribbeans and Africans. You go to Manhattan, Mali, Guinea, Guinea-Conakry, Mali, and Senegal restaurants in Manhattan. You see? So I understand, man, remember, if you go up to Harlem, that bit, it's almost concentrated. So there was this feeling where Harlem used to belong to us. Now, it's gentrified, like Harlesden, where I live. You know, I'm a minority. I'm not a minority. You know what I'm saying? So they're saying these people are moving in, and in a sense, we feel a little hurt because these people are taking advantage of the common color we share. That's what they say. They're taking advantage of the fact that we're all black. Now, my view, how would you respond to that? Would you say that Africans are taking advantage of the color and that the avenues that have been opened up by African Americans, that they're just flooding that space to the exclusion of Africa? Would you say that's valid? What would you say?
I would not say they're taking advantage. I would say they benefit.
Yeah.
Do they benefit? Yes.
Yeah.
But I won't say they take advantage.
Sorry, Uncle, does that fall in line where you were talking about when someone comes somewhere and arrives somewhere, they've got a plan, and especially in a lot of West African cultures, education's, I have to give it to the West Coast, education's up there. And where a majority of doctors and nurses that I found in the US, majority of them come from the West African communities. So does that play a factor in it because you've come there for a plan to make money?
Yeah, I think so. I think the idea of family, you come with two things, family and education.
And you've got a different identity as well.
Remember, a Ghanaian family will say, sit down, and even if you buy candlelight, do your homework. Get it done. I grew up like that in Trinidad. My village, sometimes the light would just go. Electricity would just go. And we had to fill buckets of water at the stand pipe. We didn't have pipe bowl water in the house. Let me tell you this. But no matter what, there ain't no electricity, put a candle and study. Now, a lot of Africans have that too. Now, check it out. African Americans mean not. I don't know. I've never been to Mississippi. I always had a plan to go deep south. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Atlanta, down. I've been to Atlanta, but not down deep. You know, to see the real culture of the African American, to see the extent to which they might still be affected by a kind of fear of being ambitious. Something like that. That's why a lot of them ran north. You see, when you check it out, a lot of Caribbeans left during the Windrush period to come here. What we fail to recognize is there was a migration in America too. It just took place over land. During the Great Depression, many African Americans living in those same states, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, moved north. Whole families. Some of them, like the way they did the Caribbean, like some left first, set themselves up, and then others came. Even Elijah Muhammad, he's from down Georgia. When Elijah Muhammad was growing up as a boy, Elijah Muhammad saw, like his mother sent him to the shop, Elijah Muhammad saw people lynched hanging from strange fruit, hanging from the poplar tree. Elijah Muhammad saw this as a boy, going to the shop. They call him sundown town. You get out of town before it gets dark. You see, and a lot. So when we talk about our displacement, they had a displacement because it was overland. They go to Michigan, they go to New York. Even Malcolm X's family, they moved up because we don't see it, the displacement. We see ours as Caribbeans because we have, you got to spend all that money to get back home, when you're retired to build a house in Jamaica or wherever it is. But there, it happened in America too. So I believe that kind of displacement on top of the slavery, and then they're encountering problems getting loans. I do believe Caribbeans, and my family I have to get back to them on this. I believe Caribbeans have an easier time taking out loans in America than African Americans. When I was in America,
significantly easier.
this I need to check on that, so that we stick a pin on that. When I was going to apply for certain jobs, my family said straight, speak with your English accent. Do not use a Caribbean accent. Don't use an American accent. Speak with an English accent. Always. You're black, but they will just sing it. They'll put your name on the top. They'll put your application on top, straight up. They do that. So there is something perhaps in favoring the outsider. There must be something to do with that. And like you said again, America is the kind of culture, if you work your socks off, you will get to the top. And I believe the Africans had that over the African Americans. And I hope that's not too controversial a point I've just made it.
See, I have difficulty with that point, that the African American is sat in America with some other priority other than working hard to get what's it. Now, my thing is, what I was saying to Khalid is, the West African immigrants to the West were always economic migrants. As a child, my parents practically beat it into me. Education. You get that degree no matter whether it's going to put you back in debt, whatever. And one of the things that my parents taught me as a little kid is, you're going to have to work 3 times harder, than the indigenous people of this country to get yours. And that's exactly the mentality that we set out with. Not to step on anybody's neck, not to put anyone down, but to put ourselves ahead at any means at any cost necessary. And
it's resilience. We got that in abundance as Africans. That's one thing.
But to be faulted for that, like the Sheikh said, bro, but even thinking about it, it's a criable situation. When I go back to the last time I went to Ghana was 2004. When I see little kids, like the Sheikh said, in darkness, candle-lit lights, homes that are not even finished, no roofs. When it rains, it all comes. To say, when those people manage to get a ticket, manage to land a visa, and then end up somewhere in the south of USA, that they become elites. Are you not even shy to even say that? These people are an elite class.
Yes.
Or yes, they may have came as students, but is this them coming as students? Does that mean that they're better off financially back home, or that they necessarily have some empire back home to go back to, or that they can run away from the American problems? That they wouldn't have been lynched at the same time. The white American man does not see distinction between me and Sheikh Danjuma and his brother here and Khalid. They don't see that. Now I understand the brain work, the warfare, the psychological warfare that they've done to the two groups is different, right? But like the brother said, that's not necessarily mean that the solution for both of those parties is not the same. And quite clearly, they lump us in the same batch anyway. So, I mean, the only thing that I would say ADOS has, right, is in terms of reparations.
Yes,
I personally don't believe
I fully support that. I
personally don't believe it's they're ever going to give them reparations, or there's some viable metric by which they would quantify how to give anybody this back. But one of my arguments yesterday was, we're met with this hostility, Sheikh Danjuma. I don't know what your take will be on it. If ADOS's thing is to separate the African immigrants away from those immigrants who went through slavery because of the job or the work that's been done to their forefathers, right? Then would it not also follow then that ADOS should divide itself into 2 parties? The children of house Negroes and the children of field Negroes, right? And the children of the field Negroes would need to be compensated more than those of the house Negro, because the house Negro never had it bad as a field Negro.
Yeah.
I mean, if we gain that deep into, I don't want to be mischievous.
I know, but I'm trying to know how can we determine that is
That's my whole point.
progeny of a field Negro as opposed to the offspring of a house Negro.
Whoa.
How can we tell?
That's my whole point. Well,
Professor Henry Louis Gates. How would you classify Professor Skip Gates?
I have not seen his face. I wouldn't
Oh,
know
you
how.
don't know, okay.
But I'm saying, but
Alright.
generally speaking,
I was being mischievous. I kind of don't like him too much.
no, because one of the things that annoyed me about this video that Khalid showed me was that the woman who was talking to the brother was significantly lighter than the brother, right? And she could very well go.
Like a Latina.
Miss, like she could.
Mulatto, what do they call it?
Yeah, mulatto.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's a hot lady,
She could
basically.
easily slide underneath the radar whilst that brother would get lynched, beaten, battered, and bruised. And then she's trying to tell him, you are not black enough. Then it was put to him that there was a white cameraman who's did his DNA and he's got the blood of slaves, of African descendants of slavery.
And she was saying he's lived the experience.
And he was saying he hasn't.
He
So
hasn't.
she was saying his color allows him to hide from the onslaught or the oppression of the other white man. But my point is it seemed to me like there's shifting of goalposts. Here, the origin of your argument is that African descendants of American descendants of slavery. That's by blood right, according to you. It's not by color. But when it happens to be a man that's significantly lighter or appears white in appearance, you take away his ancestry. I mean, who's to say that he hasn't gone through any psychological effects of slavery via his parents and via DNA?
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Would you argue? Sorry, I'm cutting you.
no.
Would you argue that there is a concerted and determined policy in the film industry to select
British
black
accent.
with the accents,
with the British
or is it
accent.
because they're from Africa, or is it because they have the accent?
Or maybe British black actors are just better at the job.
But
That's just maybe.
Well, let's put that out there. Let's ask
They're
this.
gonna
Wait,
go for
so-
No, let's ask this.
So this
Maybe.
is something. Okay, so
Maybe someone's better than you at the job.
Wait, are we asking the question? Are they choosing the British African actors because of their accents? Because of their English accent? Because they're not playing these roles, they're actually taking on African American accents when they play them.
That's the thing. No, do you not find it a kind of legitimate complaint? A little bit, just a bit.
Because they've highlighted a couple of British actors now.
Wait.
It's like 1, 2, 3,
Do you know what?
4.
Maybe I'm an idealist, but I see these people. Bro, Daniel Kaluuya is an excellent actor. I see
No
his
doubt.
merit.
No doubt.
No one can tell me he played a bad role in it. But Samuel L. Jackson.
I didn't know he was an African until somebody
He
said
was- he
it.
was
I think he was a Ugandan until someone told me.
I thought it was African American until they started speaking.
Yeah.
Bruv, Peckham.
Yeah.
That's down the road from
I
me.
know. And the sister,
Cynthia Erivo.
Cynthia Erivo.
Bruv,
she's
I
from
went to school with her. Vauxhall. She's from South London, bruv. From the hood.
Yeah, she's from the block.
She's from the hood. She worked her way, bro. She went and done Broadway and all of that. She's been grinding and grafting. She didn't get anything handed to her on a plate. And that's my issue. Where it's like,
And I
you've
think
had everything handed to you.
And Eesa, I think she nailed the role as well. When I watched the whole film, Harriet, I think she nailed it.
To be honest, I haven't watched the film because there are some aspects of the film.
Yeah.
Hollywood always does it. Yeah, they always send subliminals about black people. The criminal ends up being a black man and it's just this.
Do we still get killed first?
I've seen it.
Oh,
still
I'm
get
not
killed first.
probably. I've stopped.
I've seen it in a
actually-
couple of Somali films like Captain.
I've actually
There's a
abandoned.
camera there. Are you? Oh, okay.
I've actually abandoned and boycotted all type of slave genre films. So I don't watch that anyway. 12 Years a Slave, all of that nonsense. You're
Okay,
not
so
gonna
let me
find
ask the question.
Yeah.
Does the Obama thing that Jesse Jackson say have any merit? When Jesse Jackson felt he hadn't won his spurs,
Okay.
he hadn't earned the right, he hadn't lived the African
I would
American.
say, due to the Obama's actions, Jesse might have been onto something.
No, prior. He said it even before.
Right.
He said it on the eve.
Prior, I
of-
just think he was bitter, to be honest. I don't
Maybe
know. I
after-
just feel Jesse is a better man anyway. Just
You reckon?
Jesse? But then again, if you look at after
How come he didn't
presidents-
make it through all that and Obama just came up from the wings and
wait,
flanked him?
okay, but politics is about garnering support, right?
Yep.
What
Like
are we-
Jesse walked with brother King. Dr. King.
Right,
He
but
should have been able to.
But does that validate you to be because you
No,
worked
because
with,
he was an activist in his own right.
Yeah.
Jesse has been an activist in his own right.
I hear that, but
You know?
what I'm saying is, does activism necessitate that you're the best person for politics?
Excellent.
Well, looking at Jesse's track record, it baffles me that he actually did, let me be fair let's bring the balance. He shed a tear, he did cry when Obama was elected. He said this is a turning point for the African American people. He did that. So he was gracious at that juncture. Prior to it, he was saying things like, I don't know, I mean, this guy, who is he?
So maybe perhaps it was a political ploy that he was saying that because he felt it would rouse the emotions.
I think it was part of the ADOS thing. I think it was an early expression of the ADOS situation that you highlighted. I believe so. And I'm still I wish to God we had an African American here who was not of, you get me, who was ADOS.
I know.
You know, because as a Caribbean
So
person.
there's a guy called Godo Jacob that I speak to online. He would have been perfect
I
for
would
this
say,
conversation.
but then look again. Maybe they need to change the name. I don't know. Maybe it's African. It's only the United States because, as far as I'm concerned, the Caribbean islands also went through.
They
but I think
they feel like that about us too.
Concord.
Yeah, so
What was your the Caribbeans one? They had a sort of different name, Concord. So I think you guys actually got.
Is there a Caribbean movement?
Your movement
for
was-
reparations?
Oh yeah, well we kind
Just
of
the Caribbean
started
island,
it.
with the Caribbean islands by itself.
Yeah, but no, that's not the
There was
beef.
a name. There was a name for it. I forgot.
I don't even know either. My main concern is, as a Pan-Africanist, what this is doing to the family. That is my main concern. Now, I hear rumblings like this in Harlesden where I live. I spend a lot of time, I waste a lot of time on Saturday evening in the sauna. And in my area there. And people sit and get together and they talk about this. And I'm hearing Caribbeans talking the same way about Africans. I'm hearing them say things like, well, we came first, we did all the dirty work, and now...
Which they did.
But
do
right
a
now,
lot
of the Africans, we don't have the middle class kind of African coming anymore. The middle class, like your parents, the middle class ones who came and who used to look at Caribbeans as, you people are the Wakata, what is that? Akata in Yoruba, the sugar cane eaters, Akata, you know, those kind are no more. The Africans we coming now is like working class. If such a concept still exists in the way of labor relations of change. The African coming now is more like the Caribbean who came as working class to work on London transport and in the health cleaning. So it's different. But there is this feeling that the children of the educated ones, like what's the girl who's always on television, her dad must be Jewish. Her surname is, she's Ghanaian. She's always on with,
Ghanaian.
yes, she looks, but she's mixed race.
She's on the news. No?
Always on. Hurst is the name.
Yeah.
That's the name, Hurst. Right, Una King, Ghanaian. King.
What's German?
Yeah, well, Una King is Jewish, you know, on her mom's side. Or one side of King. I think one of them is Jewish, one is Ghanaian.
That's deep, man.
Yeah, she's in the House of Lords now. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of Africans who have made it from the middle class nature of the first crop that came. Now it's leveled out, it's leveled down, unfortunately. So everybody poor now. The Africans poor, and they can't claim middle class status, and the Caribbeans still poor, right? But the situation in America, to me, I think is creating I want to think this. It's creating a bigger problem than need exist. But I am hesitant about saying that without listening to an African American who is from the ADOS community saying, well, listen, we're experiencing this, and it's beginning to jar. I haven't...
To be honest, I'm starting to think the Pan-African thing is a pipe dream. I was saying that to Dawood the other day. I'm starting to wonder if the ties are maybe too superficial to uphold themselves.
If the tent is too big, under which we're trying to force all these people.
Yeah.
The tent might be the tent is too small, and we're trying to force too many people under this tent. You see, what I would like for the African American to say is, we have to get together and use this as a spur to build our community, but not in opposition to the Africans who've just come, or the Caribbeans who've just come, or the Afro-Latinos who've just come. We're doing it because we have to do it. It's like what I said about India. I believe every African country, every African ethnicity, every group, every subgroup, and every sub-clan has to get working on their local constituency. But we cannot do it in opposition. And I feel this discourse that you posted, it's being done in opposition. It's like African Americans are being told to wise up because these blacks from the continent who've always regarded you all as slaves are still regarding you all as slaves and are taking advantage of all the effort you've put in to clear this path. They just steamroll their way through it, and then
So that actually
that's
brings up,
worrying me about that discourse.
that actually brings up something which, in some aspects, I'm a little bit ashamed to see, but it's valid. There is an attitude amongst, and I don't know if it can be validated. That's another conversation that needs to be had. But there is an attitude by people from the African continent towards African American culture as a lowly sub kind of culture. That's like, you know, you don't have like you single parent. You know, like what the brother Saeed said in Kenya when he stood on the minbar and said, "A'adhamuhum abna' az-zina." This is part of the to stand on the minbar and say something, a
He's
statement
saying what
saying,
a lot of people are thinking.
saying that,
He's
yes.
actually saying what a lot of people
and
back
know
home are
what,
thinking.
because otherwise someone would stand up and say, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
But for you to stand on the pulpit in the masjid, in another country which got nothing to do with these men, and say that the majority of them are children of fornication, that speaks to these old sort of ideas. And I believe, I don't know, like, the thing is, I'm kind of sort of stepping out of this thing of blaming white people all the time. Even though they have their effect is there, the pitting parties, what they did to the Hootsies and the
We got to
Tootsies
deal
and
with some
whatever.
self-agency as well.
We need to.
Yeah.
I've always been saying accountability. I think accountability is one that us Africans shy
But when I
away
asked
from.
this question, he mentioned Saeed, the Imam.
Yeah.
Would you not argue, perhaps, we need to, Africa is so big, you see, we need to dissect it a little. Would we not argue that the lower classes, I hate using these terms because there's so much in the news. Every time I hear that term, I'm seeing that woman Priti Patel in her face, man. I don't want to, I don't want nothing. This is the kind of person that boils my blood. But so this,
You're not alone.
yeah, man. This,
The Home Secretary.
you know, the kind of people that they're using against us. They take your own kind and make them the overseer on the plantation. But let's Parker have a whole. Let's dedicate a whole series
I'll
to
just say
her.
she's an idiot, though.
Yeah, no. She knows what she's doing. She went behind even the conservative back to make a pact with Benjamin Netanyahu, and she got caught. She got fired. She went out the front door, came around the back door, and got back in. That woman, she shouldn't even be in politics. But she made me forget what I was going to say. What I was going to say is this: perhaps in the African continent, the middle classes still entertain this akata, this they are sons of slaves. But the working classes, they like a bit of 50 Cent. They like a bit of Boys in the Hood and the rest of it. So I think there are different levels of
the middle class
Africans.
enjoys it too. The irony is most people who look down on African American
What kind of cognitive
culture,
dissonance? There's a kind of
they
dissonance.
appropriate lots of it.
There's a kind of dissonance.
Up
Okay.
until India, which obviously you've got the caste system there. We look down on black people adversely. Even they're doing all these street dances and talking in the slang and what have you. Everyone is it's like everyone wants the culture of African Americans and Caribbeans, but doesn't want to pay the people the respect.
Everyone wants to be black.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. There are some parts of African American culture which I dislike. Yeah, but that's not to say you know throw it all out.
There's some parts of my culture I dislike.
I had to say it to another brother the other day. Up until recently, Ashanti, we were doing crazy stuff, cutting people's heads off for rituals and all sorts of nonsense. And I'll stand here and say, I do take pride in being Ashanti, but I don't take pride in any
Do
of
you
that shit.
take pride in the good things of the Ashanti?
things.
I always tell people that one of the mistakes that has accounted for the rise of neo-Nazism in Germany is at the end of the period when Hitler was defeated, Potsdam Conference and all that, they made the Germans feel that they should hate themselves. They did not
French.
differentiate between Nazism and being German. And that accounts for that significant constituency of Germans who espouse neo-Nazism. I believe you have to allow people to like what is good in their culture without telling them it is asabiya, it's nationalism. Because especially if people who have been damaged through history, you have to allow them to accentuate the positive and build on them. If they keep trying to take from other people's culture, I mean, even a simple thing like what embarrasses me is, I love African clothes as much as the next man, but the material is made in Holland. It's made in Austria. It's made in Germany. You get the Getzner. The Getzner is made in Germany. The Dutch Vlisco, Dutch wax there. The Sudanese tobe. Forget about black West African. The Sudanese wear something called a tobe for women. All of it made in Switzerland and so forth. Now I look at India and I feel a little jealous. Because one thing with Indians, listen man, when the British attempted to stifle the Indian textile trade, Gandhi said, I'm taking off all my clothes. Forget about what else you think about Gandhi. Let's talk about this bit. He took off all, I said, I'm going to actually spin.
It's not good to sell out. It's not good to sell out.
We need an NHS consultant in this part there, bro. There's too many ill people.
I expect better from him sometimes, So you got this guy sitting on the spinning wheel, and he made it his motif, where they're actually making their own clothes. And let me tell you something. I go to the Sudanese shop, Excelsior, on Oxbridge Road in Shepherd's. I give them a plug because it's Indians, but still, because they're doing for their own kind, which we should be doing for our own kind. And they're selling us material. So I go to the Sudanese shop because I got some friends in the Sudan and they would like some gifts. And I'm going to buy tobe. They call it tobe, the material they wrap around. It's sari-ish looking. Now, when I go there, I said, what material? He said, this is the German material, but we recommend the Indian cotton. Sikhs selling you, and they are recommending the one made by them. They're actually telling you, this is more expensive, the one from Switzerland. But we recommend the Indian cotton. I said, yeah, why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they? Like what I said about y'all people when I gave Somalis a shout out. What I said? I give fair dues in Halsden. Nobody could break into the halal trade. Pakistanis had that cornered. The Somalis say, you watch. Now they have, I remember the last time on tape I said they have 2 halal shops? 3. And they're thriving. They got 3. Halsden used to, the Pakistanis used to run people out. You couldn't get into the business of meat, halal meat. That's their thing. Like the corner shop belonged to the Hindus, the halal shop belonged to the Pakistanis. That was how it went until the Somalis just came. And by sheer force of numbers, they have customer base. I call that black power. Who don't like it, that's their business. I call that black power.
Whole unity spending, take a lesson.
Right.
You know?
And if the Indians want to sell their material and say, we recommend the Indian cotton. Fair dues, brother. That's what I'm saying. I would like our people to each get strong without blaming the other. And that's what I would like. So this business going on in America, I find it a little worrying. Now, I'm not there. I've been there since 2010. I had trouble on Delta Airlines. That's another story. I should talk. One of these days, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to sue Delta Airlines. I ain't done with them yet for what they did to me, right? But, the Muslim thing about back then. And the problem is, if we had an African-American here or two, they could perhaps give their story and say why they feel. Because I'd like to hear Caribbean Muslims in Halsden. I'd like to hear from them saying, I say, guys, we've been here longer than the Somali. How come we don't have a halal shop? How come they have one? And they will remind me of Brother Abdoulaye Ba from Senegal, who was the first person trying to open a shop in Halsden. Now, for the record, it was not a halal meat shop. He was opening a corner shop. He's from Senegal. And the Fulanis, they like, when they are not herding cattle, they like corner shops. They don't like working for people. So he's a Fulani from Senegal. He has his corner shop. The Hindu contingent in the area told the wholesalers, if you supply that fella, I'm sure they use the N-word, that color, don't bring your goods to us. They froze the guy out. They ran him out. You see, they couldn't do it with the Somali because the Somali had numbers. Their people go and buy in their shops. So now I see the Pakistani butchers, when you see them now, they're doing the thing they never used to do before. They're standing at the door welcome, begging you to come in. Because the consumers base has dropped, right? Now, I want our people to think in terms of development. If Ghana is developing, if the Nzima, the Ashanti, the Akwapim, the Fanti, the Ahanta, if they develop, each group develops itself, I don't want to hear them saying, I am developing at your expense or you developing at my expense. Maybe that's a pipe dream like the brothers say for Pan-African, but that's my way of looking at Pan-Africanism. I want our groups to work each on their own and link up. When they're strong, even if they're not strong, if they see the opportunity to link up. But this to me is worrying. This thing about African Americans versus the rest.
Do you know what? You open up another can of worms. Yeah, because even when we talk about a can, you know, I don't even like it's. I'm laughing because I don't even hear people like even break down the certain little factions of their can. The can are made up of subgroups. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you say Akwapim, like I like forget Akwapim. Afanti and Shanti can't.
And their languages are almost incomprehensible.
They can't just, it has got a bit to do with it's got a bit to do with a coonery though.
No, but you had to coon. You had to coon. You know why they had to coon? Listen, these guys.
Ghanaian friends, I'm not getting involved.
These guys push them to the coast. They are the guy. Squeeze them on the coast. The Danish people arrived and gave them weapons. What do you think they're gonna do? That's our unfortunate history. Our history is unfortunate.
You are
a Hausa man. You are not in this one. These are these Southerners.
My grandmother actually is an Ethiopian.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. See what happened to the Fanti? People like to say the Fanti cooned out, but the Fanti.
Look,
they kind of had to coon because they were the next place they were going to get pushed is into the sea. They're going to get pushed into the ocean.
It's a West Coast story. It's a West Coast story.
It's
a West Coast story.
Us fancy man about ham and cheese and everything there. Bro, listen, they are
my name is Kingsley Hayford.
Yeah. Bro, no, it's so deep, bro. Listen, it's so deep.
Proud of it.
I had an interview. This was in 2012. I'm having an interview with a dude and I know this guy is from my country. But I'm so thrown off. I'm reading his name. Cuddler Lindsay. What? Where did that come from? Like the most imperial of English names they adopt. And they maybe it's a Ashanti thing, it's an Ashanti bias, but let me step out anyway. It would be of benefit for all of those groups to empower themselves on an individual basis and then come together as a unit, all strengthened in their own branches. But we don't even think, we're not even in that state of thinking of how are we going to benefit 3 generations
how can
later.
How can we get there?
Education.
Like what are we doing?
And part education. But I feel like there needs to be
do you think by just telling people top down, our similarities outweigh our differences? Do you think the people on the ground are going to buy that? I mean, we're saying that kind of top down.
Right.
Because it's an aspiration.
And Nkrumah was trying to do that.
And Nyerere in Tanzania. Nyerere the same in Tanzania.
Do away with... Okay, the groups are very partisan. Ashanti want an Ashanti person in power. Afanti want Ga.
But I think Nkrumah and Nyerere had a little more success, actually much than most other African countries. I think Ghana, relatively speaking, and Tanzania, relatively speaking, are much less tribalistic, tribally sensitive than other countries in Africa. I think so.
Yeah, we're not fighting each other anytime soon.
You know what? I've seen that with the Ghanaians, my brothers. Why do you think that is? Because how many tribes are the Ghanaian factor breaks down to? It's not like Nigeria where there's 250.
No, there's loads.
There's loads.
Maybe not as much, but there are loads. To the point where
if I go up 80 something,
bro, if I go up north, I won't
not as much as Ethiopia, but it's loads. But it's quite low. It's still a lot.
If I travel,
I think it's because both, not really. Nkrumah came from Nzima. He was from not a large group. So when people, it's like if they want to unite the Caribbean, if you try to use a Jamaican, you're on a hiding to nothing. Nobody will like it. In fact, they didn't like it when we attempted the Caribbean Federation. They chose the premier, the head of state from Barbados, and they put the Caribbean capital in Trinidad. The Jamaicans said,
That's like my tribe.
we don't get a look in.
You see my Somali tribe, the Al-Sultan is from the smallest tribes.
Right.
So the big tribes don't fight.
Can I be cheeky and ask a question? Could the Jamaicans, in relation to the rest of the Caribbean diaspora, be seen as the Quraysh of the Caribbean?
Sorry. We like to laugh at that one because we know when you're talking about Islam in the Caribbean, you're talking about Trinidad. Because when you're talking about repat, I like to big up my country when they need bigging up. When they need tearing down, I tear them down. But when they need bigging up, give fair dues. The first substantial African community in the Caribbean, the Mandinka in Trinidad. We still have Mandingo Road. Let me tell you how enduring the legacy is. If a Hindu like Priti Patel, I call the name again, if a Hindu like her wants to insult a Muslim in Trinidad, they call you Madinga. The Hindu calls a Muslim Indian Madinga. It's like, imagine a Pakistani and an Indian having an argument. And the Indian call a Pakistani Madinga, call them an African tribe. It's because they know that up to quite recently, the mosques in that part of Trinidad, Mandingo Road, were African. What happened is the Africans, this is a point that people need to know, the African Muslims were the first repatriationists. 100 years before Rastafari and Papa Garvey. 100 years before Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the Rastafari movement, the African Muslims said, we are in the business of freeing any African slaves in Trinidad who are Muslim. Yes, of course, they selected Muslims, freed them, and then petitioned Queen Victoria that we are not asking for you to pay for our berth on the ship. We have our own money. We're selling our plantations. We're selling our goods and property. We want to go back and live in Africa because from this place we cannot perform Hajj. And that she refused, and later on they managed, and but it was bad for us because they left. You see, they left very few African Muslims in Trinidad because of this need to be back in the motherland where they could just walk straight along what they call the Sahel corridor to the Hajj, and so forth. And I can call names like Samba Njai, Muhammad Bath, people like they're big. From them you heard the name, they are Senegalese, or they are Guinea or Mali, that part. And there were loads of them. So there was that history of Muslims being the first. So when people try to excise Muslims from the Pan-African family, I tell them go do their research. They need to know. So when you want to talk about revolution, uprising in the Caribbean, you're talking about people like Macantal, Tal. That is a Senegalese Pulani name, Tukulor name. In Haiti, you're talking about Bookman, who came from Jamaica as coachman, and as soon as he went to Haiti, he started his mischief Jamaican. He started his mischief again. Bookman, he used to keep a Quran here. So they call him the man of the book, the Bookman. That's why they call him the Bookman. You see? He was also, you're right, in, what's that place, that island, ecological island? Dominica. Dominica, one of the first slave revolts was led by a guy called Bala. No, there ain't no Senegalese here. But anybody who knows Senegal culture, Bala means Musa. Anybody in Senegal called Bala is Musa. Another Muslim, right? We could go right back before Haiti and Dominican Republic were two different entities. When it was the island of Hispaniola, the first slave revolts in the Caribbean were led in the 15th century by Wolof. And that is when Hispaniola was Spanish, and when they said, I think it was even as early as the time of Diego Columbus, not Christopher, his son or brother or something, right? To which the Spanish began to say, it is not a good idea to take Muslim slaves to the Caribbean, right? So that was the very first. Just that I don't have any names of the leaders involved. What we know is in the Spanish writing, they call them Jelofe, they mean Wolof. They said these people were Wolof. And while they liked employing Wolof because of their literacy, they like the fact that they can keep accounts of the Wolof will also write messages about, let's do the jihad tonight. And pass it around. And it's in Arabic, and nobody knows. So you see, from the earliest time, Hispaniola, before there was Haiti and Dominican Republic, as I mentioned in the island of Dominica, Bala, That name is a Muslim name, if you know African culture, right? I mentioned Trinidad with the Mandingo Society. I mentioned Suriname. They had two leaders, Zamzam and Arabi. They were slave in Suriname. They revolted. You see, when you look at, so I mean, I haven't mentioned other names which were just Africans who were not Muslim, but I could mention them too. You know what I mean, like Taki from Ghana in Jamaica, and of course the Maroons, Kojo Kofi, Achimpong, Nani, Kweku, and all these others in Jamaica. I could mention them, so I'm not going to just stand here and say it was only Muslims who led all the slave
But the point
revolts.
is that the Islamic heritage is
they were in the
big.
forefront.
Yeah.
I don't even have to talk about Brazil in 1835. You know the story of Brazil, all those Yoruba and Hausas who led those jihads to the point where they said, we better let's direct our slave activities towards Angola, Congo, Angola, because these people on the West Coast, there are too many Muslims among them, and they're troublesome. You see, so that's what I'm trying to say. When people try to take us Muslims out of the Pan-African family, I think they're doing us a disservice and they're doing themselves a disservice. And I know what bothers them. I'm not going to talk about that today. Today we're discussing something else. But I think I'm going to start getting ready. I'm hearing my brother calling the Adhan back there.
Pray the Maghrib and then come back?
Yeah,
Or you
I
gotta
think
take
I
your
know.
head out?
You know, I'm having real difficulty these
cold,
days.
yeah.
I'm having a lot of difficulty these days. But I think we've done this subject. I don't know what more we can. I don't know. Maybe you could give us some closing words. You're from America. We're kind of happy to have you here. How long are you in the country for? You're living out? You're here for another week?
No, just week. Yes.
Are you from Washington, D.C.? So we have a brother from Washington, D.C. We give the brother a big up. He's a Muslim brother. He's a lovely brother. He's from both sides of the water. He's as American as he's African, as he's African as he's American. We love to have you, brother, in England. And ahlan wa sahlan. You're most welcome among us. And thank you for giving. Say any last word you'd like to say, man. Anything else you want to wrap the subject up?
Not much. As I've told you earlier, you know, I've benefited from a lot of your videos, and just this encounter also it's been nothing but edifying. So I've learned much more. But to pick on what you said and what you also have said, there's nothing wrong with working together and learning the strength that you don't have from one another and letting go of the weaknesses, rather than dividing. But because dividing is not going to do us any good, you know. So I think if we can learn to do that, then I think we probably will be heading the right direction. But up until we start to do that, I think we'll be far too divided to do anything.
Jazakallah khairan, ya brother. My brother Jamil, that's a lovely name. You're a lovely person. And next time you're coming through London, be certain to look us up. Barakallah feek, brother.
Sundays, you know where we'll be, you know the
Anyway, yeah. Brother Eesa, I'm going to chip that. I'm going to go to the masala. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, alaikum
Is there
assalam.
who's going to be leaving? I'm going to leave it alone here.
I'll speak to you.
You with this? You going to look after this?
I'll look after this. After prayers, I'll look after this.
Okay, then. Listen, I hope we did justice to the topic you wanted us to discuss.
That's it.
I wish we had an African American here
That's what I'm
to
saying.
bring some.
That's all I wanted. A couple of
balance.
That's all. That's it. Was it? What I like to tell them.
Because my family have the same connections because they're Caribbean.
Yeah, we're just
Living in America, and they get the same vibe. They tell I didn't believe it, but they tell me there is a kind of a tension between we and them.
Yeah, but all I wanted to say,
sorry.
any of the brothers from ADOS, just leave some comments, let us know, and enlighten us, educate us on cool.
Explain what ADOS is one last time.
African American descendants of slaves.
Of slaves, yeah.
So brothers and sisters, leave some comments, some of the views, you know how it is, and subscribe to COE, best channel on the
Thank you all for your kind attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Big cameras for that one, you get me?
ContentCOE everything from your melody.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
We want
Yeah, talk to yourself.